All right, today we're jumping into one of the most famous ideas in all of game theory. It's called the prisoner's dilemma. And it's so powerful because it helps explain this really frustrating thing about human nature. Why perfectly rational people often make choices that end up making everyone, including themselves, worse off.
I mean, you've seen this happen, right? Two gas stations across the street from each other, both cutting prices until neither is making any real money. Political parties that would rather block each other than get anything done. It just doesn't seem to make any sense. But believe it or not, there's a cold, hard logic behind it.
And it all comes down to this really powerful paradox. It's this constant tug of war between what's best for me personally and what's best for us as a group. And that tension is at the heart of the prisoner's dilemma.
Okay, so to really get this, we've got to go back to the original story. Picture this. Two partners in crime get arrested. The cops are smart, so they split them up. They put them in separate interrogation rooms. Now, this part is absolutely critical. They cannot communicate with each other at all.
So each prisoner is given the exact same two choices. Option 1 is to cooperate. That is, cooperate with your partner by staying silent and trusting them to do the same. Option 2 is to defect. You confess, you rat out your partner, and in exchange, the cops offer you a better deal. Everything, and I mean everything, hinges on this one decision.
So this grid here, this is called a payoff matrix, and it lays out all the possible outcomes. Let's walk through it. Look at that top left box. If you both cooperate, you both stay silent, you each only get 1 year. That's the best outcome for the team. But if you defect and confess while your partner stays silent, you walk away scot-free, and they get slapped with 3 years. And of course, the reverse is true. Now look at the bottom right. What if you both defect, you both confess? Then you each get 2 years. And we're about to see why that last one is pretty much guaranteed to happen.
Okay, so let's really get inside the head of one of these prisoners. Let's follow their train of thought because it reveals a kind of cold, calculating rationality that's hard to argue with. So, imagine you're sitting in that room. The clock is ticking. And you start thinking, okay, first scenario. What if my partner is a stand-up guy? What if he's keeping his mouth shut? If you know that's what he's doing, what should you do? Well, this is a pretty easy choice, isn't it? Stay silent and get a year in jail, or confess and get 0 years. I mean, come on, you're gonna confess, right? You walk free. So if your partner cooperates, your best move is to defect. But wait a minute, you can't be sure, can you? He's probably in the other room thinking the same thing, trying to save his own skin. So you have to consider the other possibility. What if he's not loyal? What if he betrays me and confesses? Let's look at the options again. If he confesses and you stay silent, you're the sucker. You get 3 long years behind bars. But if he confesses and you also confess, you only get 2 years. And 2 years is definitely better than 3, so even if your partner betrays you, your best move is still to betray them right back. You see what just happened? It doesn't matter what your partner does. If they stay silent, your best move is to confess. If they confess, your best move is to confess. In game theory, this is called a dominant strategy. It's the choice that gives you the best personal outcome, no matter what the other guy does. And in this case, it's always to defect. And here it is. This is the paradox in all its glory. Because confessing is the dominant strategy for you, and it's also the dominant strategy for your partner, you both follow your own rational self-interest, and you both confess. The result? You each get 2 years in prison, which is clearly worse for both of you than the 1 year you would have gotten if you just trusted each other. Individual logic leads to a collective failure. Now, this isn't just some abstract thought experiment, okay? Once you understand this basic structure, you will start to see it absolutely everywhere, from huge international conflicts down to your own daily life. Let's take a classic example, a price war between Coke and Pepsi. The logic is identical. If they both cooperate and keep their prices high, they both make a ton of money, say $500 million. But that temptation to defect is always there. If Coke cuts its prices and Pepsi doesn't, Coke can steal the market and make a whopping $750 million. So the dominant strategy for both is to cut prices. And what happens? They both end up in a brutal price war, and they each walk away with way less profit. And the list just goes on and on. Think about international arms races. It's a prisoner's dilemma. Doping in sports, same thing. Even something as simple as a group project in school. You know, everyone would get a better grade if they all worked hard, but the temptation to slack off and let others carry the weight is always there. Okay, so this all sounds pretty bleak, right?
It kind of feels like we're just doomed to constantly betray each other out of self-interest. But what if it's not a one-and-done deal? What happens if you have to play the game again and again?
So, is there a way out of this trap? Can we actually escape this cycle where our own logic leads us to a worse outcome for everyone?
And the answer is a huge yes. The key, the absolute game changer, is repetition. The moment you know you have to deal with this person again tomorrow, or next week, or next year, something called the shadow of the future appears. And suddenly, things like your reputation, trust, and the possibility of getting revenge, they all come into play and change the entire calculation.
So if you know you're going to be playing this game over and over, what's the best way to do it? Well, researchers have run countless computer simulations to find the winningest strategy, and it turns out to be surprisingly simple and incredibly effective.
It's called Tit-for-Tat, and it follows 3 very simple rules. Rule 1, be nice. You always start by cooperating. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Rule 2, be retaliatory. You immediately do whatever they did to you on the last turn. If they defected, you defect right back, no questions asked. And Rule 3, this one's crucial, be forgiving. The second they go back to cooperating, you immediately forgive them and start cooperating too. It's not a pushover, but it doesn't hold a grudge. It's simple, it's clear, and it's amazing at building cooperation over time.
So, at the end of the day, the prisoner's dilemma isn't really telling us that humans are just fundamentally selfish. It's more like a roadmap. It shows us how our immediate short-term instincts can get us into trouble, but it also gives us the solution, building trust and remembering that we're all playing a long game. And that really leaves us with a big question to think about. Now that we understand this trap, and we know the power of repetition and forgiveness, how can we start to design our systems, in our businesses, in our politics, even in our own families, to get out of this paradox and encourage the kind of cooperation that actually makes life better for everyone?